The previous lesson, we introduced you to working with objects and how we can contain values within our objects. We're going to briefly look at how we can use objects within more of a constructor type fashion using JavaScript and also using functionality. And then we're also going to introduce you to functions in the upcoming lesson. So first thing that we want to do is we're going to set up our object. And the way that we're going to do that is, so my object, and I'm going to create object B. And I'm going to do it similar to what I've done over here where I'm declaring a new object, but I'm going to declare it new. And instead of object, I'm just going to use a variable, and actually this is going to be a function name, so I can just call it something like my function, or maybe something creator or something like that to be more indicative of what we're trying to do. And then I'm going to send over those values to it. So Lawrence, so this will go into first name, and this will go into the company, and then this will go into the age. So it looks similar the way that we're setting this up, but we actually need to have some more information in order to set this up properly. And this is where we're going to briefly introduce functions, and we're going to talk more about functions in the upcoming lesson. So we're passing 3 arguments over, so we need a way to hold on to those arguments. So I'm just going to use A, B, and C for lack of something better in this demonstration. And then I'm going to assign to this first name, I'm going to assign A, this company, I'm going to assign B, and this age, I'm going to assign C. And now when I go over and I want to take a look at what my object B, the contents of my object B, I can console log that out, and we'll take a look at this. So what do you think is happening here when we take a look at the source code? We see that we're calling over, so much like we did over here, we're declaring a new object, but here we're actually declaring new, and we're calling over to a function, and then from that object that we're creating and we're passing over some information here. So let's take a look and see what actually happens here within this creation. So I'm going to refresh it, and we see that it actually looks the same way. So we're actually able to create objects in 3 different ways, and we see that it gets output within that same type of format. So we've got our first name, our company, our age, and so on. And this was just maybe another way, constructor way to create your objects. And then of course we do have the ability to update these objects within that same fashion, where we can call to the first name if we want, and do something like my object B, and see what the first name output is going to be. And we see that we get that same first name being returned. And the beauty of doing it this way is that if I wanted to create a my object C, so I'm going to just do it right underneath, and I can just put some 2s here, so I have a different value, and maybe I want to output my object C. It's a lot quicker when we start creating multiple objects that are going to contain those same types of values. So we've got our first name, company, and age, and then the same thing for the second. Of course, these values will work independently of each other. So my object B, so any changes we make to my object B won't happen within my object C because they're separate containers of the data. And this was just another way of creating and constructing our objects. And this is more of an object-oriented type fashion where we're creating these new objects, and then we've got a function here that's essentially constructing that object in the same type of format as we did when we were setting up our objects earlier on in the lessons. So you're probably looking at this and saying, wow, those functions are really functional. And this is another one of those core pieces of JavaScript. Once you get comfortable with using functions, there's a whole lot you can do with functions. And we're going to be introducing you to and talking more about functions in the upcoming lessons. So there's quite a lot to learn about functions, but once you get comfortable with them, you can do some really amazing things within your coding. So that's all coming up in the next lesson.